Hello everyone, in this session we will learn how to deploy to an Azure App Service from a public Git repository with autosync disabled using Azure CLI. When autosync is disabled, code changes in the remote Git repository will not trigger a redeployment of the web application. For this session, you will need to have the following prerequisites in place. You should have an Azure subscription, you should have Azure command line interface installed in your machine, you should have a Git client installed in your machine for Git specific activities. Watch the Azure Prerequisites playlist to install all the tools that you will need for the session. Let's have a look at the steps we are going to follow to deploy code from Git repository with autosync disabled. First, we will create a resource group. Then, we will create an app service plan in the resource group. Once app service plan is ready, we will create a web application in the app service plan. Next, we will configure the Git repository from which we will be deploying the code to the web application. Now we will check if the site is accessible. Once the site is up, we will make changes to the code in the Git repository. After pushing the code changes to the remote Git repository, we will verify if the remote deployment has happened or not. Ideally, there should not be any changes in the web application. Let's go ahead and execute the above mentioned steps. In the screen, you can see the steps we will be executing to deploy code from remote Git repository with autosync disabled. For creation of the resource group, we will need a resource group name and a location. Let's define variables for them. Group sts. Command to create a resource group is as follows: is add group create and use the G parameter to mention the resource group name. L parameter to mention the location. And we will use the -o parameter to display output of the command executed in the tabular format. For creating an app service plan, we will be using FreeTire and our machines will be Linux based. We will need a name for the app service plan. Let's define a variable for that. App service plan name equal to all tech ASP. Command for creating the app service plan is as follows: is add apps service it. We will use the G parameter again to enter the resource group name, the -n parameter to enter the app service plan name, then define the tire. We'll use the SKU parameter. In our case, we are using free. Then we'll use the O parameter table. Now let's create a web application in the app service plan we just created. We will need a name for the web application. Let's define a variable for that. We'll use the variable web app name. Command to create a web application is as follows: is that web app create. We'll use the G parameter to enter the resource group name. Then we'll use the P parameter to enter the app service plan. Then we'll use the N parameter to enter the name of the web application. Then we will use the O parameter to define the output format of the command, which is table in our case. Now let's configure the public Git repository from which we would like to deploy the code. For this, we will need the public Git repository details. Let's define a variable for that. Command to configure the Git repository will be as follows: deployment source config. Again, we use the G parameter to enter the source group name. Then we use the N parameter to enter the web app name. And then we'll use the repo URL parameter to enter the Git repository from which we would like to pull the code. And we'll use the branch parameter to enter the branch name. Now we will use the manual integration parameter which disables auto sync between source control and web. And then we'll use the O parameter to indicate how we would like to see the output of the command, which is table in our case. So we are ready with the script. Let's go ahead and execute the script. Let's wait for the script execution to complete, and after that we will check the website. We are done with executing the script. Now let's check if our web application is up and running. Our web application has successfully deployed. Now let's make some changes and push it to the remote repository. Just going to change the message a bit. All right. We have pushed our changes to the remote Git repository. Now let's check if we can see the changes in the web application. We cannot see any changes in the web application even though we have checked in the changes to the remote Git repository. This demonstrates that changes are not pulled by the web application when auto sync up is disabled.